with great pleasure, I welcome Rhino Keith and Steve Richards today to Agencyphonics. And you guys how long have you now been in my life for? I think it started with Ryan, wasn't it? How long ago did we first? So 2 years ago, is it around that time?
About 2.5 years ago.
About 2.5 years ago. And I live in the countryside. I live in a very rural place, and I was at the local village barbecue, where the average age of the people in the barbecue is about 96. And I think I was serving up hot dogs or something. And this lady came over who wasn't 96, probably anyone who wasn't, and said to me, "Hi, you know Rhino Keith?" And I was like, I know this guy. And he said, "Yeah, he's got a business called Jago." And as everyone can see from your T-shirts, nice branding, guys. and we spoke, and I looked on LinkedIn because, I all have this really stupid rule about I only connect to people I've met or I'm going to speak to. And we hadn't spoken, had we? And we hadn't met. Is that right? No. But weirdly, you were connected to me, and it was like I knew you, but I didn't. And we met up in Giraffe in Guildford. Yeah. Following that, I think one of us reached out and said, "Hey, you met my sister-in-law," or something like that. And we met up, and you started to tell me your story. And I guess since then, we've really helped each other out a little bit, actually, because I started giving you a few pointers. And then very kindly, I think we didn't plan this today, by the way, but we literally this week I just agreed that I'm going to work with Jago to help me really define my personal brand strategy, which is really exciting. We'll talk about that later on. But that was no set piece either. We've had this planned for a long time, this talk. So first of all, welcome. Where are you? Where are you, Steve? First, I'm loving today's backdrops. They are my favorite. It's like the return of the Zoom backdrop, but I think it's actually real. So where are you, Steve?
I'm actually in a place called Saltburn. So I've brought my family here for a little break. So it's a bit, I live in Yorkshire, I live in Leeds, and said before my son goes to school next week, I wanted to take both my sons to the beach and just have a bit of fun. So yeah, I'm in Saltburn today representing Yorkshire.
Brilliant. So my daughter's about to leave to go to York University in about 2 weeks' time. So I will be travelling up to Yorkshire a little bit more often. So if I pass Leeds, I'll come up and say hello.
I have to sort you out a flat cap, and then you can mix and blend.
Yeah, I mean, weirdly, it's probably a story for another day, but I used to work. I worked for a very short period in Top Man Leeds when Chris Moyles was a DJ in the store, and I sold the whole England football team clothes. But that's a story for another day. So, and Ryan, where are you?
I'm actually representing the Southerners today. I'm in a place called Hindhead.
Oh, okay.
Golf. I'm just opposite the Hindhead Golf Club. I'm in a fancy studio at the end of my garden. No, I'm not. I'm actually in my shed. So I'm waiting for the day for one of these foam parts to drop off and for it to reveal
those really cool sort of soundproofing type things.
It is, yes. People kept on saying I look like I was in a sauna. So
that's actually true. I remember that conversation.
The problem is when I spoke to someone else, and he was a prospect wanting to have a chat with us, and he too was in a sauna-like environment. So I said, right, I need to do something about that. So there you go. They may fall off. Hopefully they don't. But yeah,
I've just got visions of this panel falling down, behind you. But you actually have won the award for the second funniest Zoom I've had over the past 6 months of COVID-19, because I was on a call with you, and you got up to go and get a glass of water or something, and your dog actually jumped on to your chair and was had joined the meeting, and it was the funniest thing ever. And if you haven't seen Simon Harmer recently doing a very serious podcast interview from Thursday while one of his team is pretending to be an aeroplane flying around the office, that was my favourite one of all. So tell me, first of all, sorry, Ryan?
No, I'm just saying I have the worst behaved dogs. It's not for the lack of trying. I've spent so much money on them. Steve actually fell asleep once on my sofa, and I think one of my dogs was chewing on his dread.
Not happy about it.
No, I'm sure. So tell me about Jago. Tell me about the name.
Wow.
What's the story?
I'll start off the first part, and Steve can finish the second part, I guess, because that's kind of how it worked. Having a meeting with my team at the time, we were a full service marketing agency on the cusp of change, because we realized that we were passionate about some of it and not passionate about the other parts. And we were called lead agency at the time. That was our intentions, but it was
quite a dull name.
Pretty dull. Some people thought it was brilliant. We thought it was good.
It runs still.
Lead agency. People were going, okay, cool. But most people thought that we generated leads. So we had a meeting in Shoreditch to get the sort of creative juices going, if you like. And I said to the team, I've got a challenge for you. I want us to change our name. I want it to be 2 syllables. I want it to sound really, really bloody cool. And ideally, it would have some meaning behind it. So we were firing out lots of cliche conversations. Cliches. It didn't land on that day. And then I'm going to let Steve take over, because that's the second part of the conversation. There was a phone call that came into me.
So I just got struck, and this name resurfaced, and it was a name that I'd learned in Cornwall. So I'd spent some time in the southwest country, and it's actually a Cornish name, Jago. But also I'd done some work in India, and they pronounce it Jago, and it's a traditional wedding dance in India, which is done at the beginning of the ceremony as a form to energize people and to wake up. Nice. So me and Ryan are proper energized people, high energy people, and
so it really is Jago
for the Indian, but for the Cornish it's Jago.
Okay.
So it's actually a Cornish male name, but the point is that the point is that when we work with people, we want to wake them up. We believe that a lot of people are walking, almost like sleepwalking on their potential. And we see our role is to facilitate that unlocking of that potential, to wake up the gifts and talents that people have in order for them to leverage them to arrive at their purpose. Because ultimately, we're people promoters, we're people lovers, and we want the best for others. We can't help people. We can't help ourselves. It's just who we are. It's how we play. And so what we want to do is we want to invigorate people, energize people to arrive at their true sense of self, and then to bless the rest of the world with that. So in a way,
I love that. It's I don't know if you ever saw that Tony Robbins documentary on Netflix a couple of years ago, but he goes through this huge sort of and it might be maybe the approach the Indians take. He goes through his ritual before every single performance to put him in a state of mind, a state of flow, and he does that, and you watch him do this, and you watch him prepare for it. And actually, listen, I wasn't always a massive Tony Robbins fan, but I love seeing I have really grown to like him now, and I love the effort he puts in to wake himself up for a performance. And last year I tried to take some things from there, and I've got out the routine of doing it. This week I had one day and I woke up, I felt a bit flat. I'm not always hyper. I try, but I'm not always. And I just said to myself, today I'm going to be brilliant, and it sounds stupid, but sometimes you can just say these things yourself in the morning, and it's amazing what an impact how your body reacts. And it woke up, and I had the most brilliant day. And so, I think that I love that you're right. I think there are a lot of people I know, very talented people. We touched on it with Ash Jones recently. I talked with him where he was saying, he's got CEOs who say, I don't know what I want to speak about. I don't know what I want to say. And they've got so much to say, but they just need it needs unlocking. And that's pretty much, isn't it, what you guys do? You help people get to understand who they are and what their values are, and to unlock that potential.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the people that we work with sometimes have got all the gear, and in their words, no idea. So they've invested in all of this camera stuff, mics. They want to put themselves out there, but they're lacking that support, and in some cases lacking that confidence to actually put themselves out there online to be judged. Us we've also gone through that process, specifically more me. Steve's more experienced with that. But for me, I was always great on a one-to-one basis, from my background in sales, but putting myself out there was something I was going to be shit scared of.
Yeah. So let's come on to that in a minute, because I do want to dig a lot deeper into it, because you guys have got a lot of really important things to say, I think. And I think we're at a time in the world where if you are a leader of an organization, I think you owe it to yourself and to your company to tap into a lot of the to unlock your true potential. You need to be able to really get your personal brand strategy correct. So I want you to share with everyone listening more about that and what they can do to help themselves. And I even want to touch a little bit on the imposter syndrome, because I know you've been talking about it later. But I want to before I do that, I just want to go back and say that when we first met, the first thing that I remember when we met face to face in Giraffe that morning for breakfast before my board meeting was that you had become B Corp certified. And I think you were like the first of 2 or 3 agencies that I'd actually met who had completed certification. And can you just explain to everyone a little bit who doesn't know what is B Corp?
B Corp is about being a force for good, Spencer. So it's about balancing profit and purpose. Okay, it's about holding your business up to at the moment, the highest level of scrutiny to prove that you are socially and environmentally responsible.
Yeah.
It's about embodying a culture which represents that. So it looks at governance, it looks at supply chains, it looks at your policies, it looks at how many was it, Ryan? Something like 400 different criteria points.
Yeah, over 400 criteria points. Took us nearly 11 months to complete the process.
Wow.
I think it's good to understand why we done it, because that's really the crux of the meaning behind becoming B Corp. Me and Steve had always been purpose driven. We'd always been good guys in our DNA, but we didn't really know what that meant. We didn't really know does it mean to have an impact on society and the environment. So we kind of had a conversation. Steve had been through some traumatic events, life and death moments when he was younger, which changed his life and served others in the third sector. I'd been in sales most of my life, doing what I do, building trust and winning ultimately in the corporate game. I came out of the corporate game, started to run the business in 2014 and realized that the one thing I was good at, it wasn't working, because I tried to replicate, put my teeth back in, the exact same what they were doing, and there was no purpose.
Yeah.
We didn't find that. And in 2015, my daughter was born, my second child. I carry a little picture beside me, because that's the inspiration behind my purpose. She came out not breathing, and the prognosis was basically 100% death or severe disabilities. And after that moment on, I said to Steve, we have to live a life full of purpose, and that needs to be driven through our business. And we were having several conversations around that, and we landed on understanding this B Corp movement. And we really wanted to work with people in the B Corp sector. And so we decided, actually, in order for us to align ourselves to B Corps, let's become one. Let's become one. Let's think big and try to go through this process together. And personally, for me as a director of that business, it taught me a lot around governance, around culture, around development, and actually
learn more about your business than you realized existed, right?
And do you know what? It's made us reach out to the community and volunteer in our community and work with people with a need, and it's fantastic, and it's been an absolutely great process.
And I don't want to, I understand the enormity of the process that you went through, and I know that because I work with several people who are going through it, and a lot of them are hitting a point when they're struggling to push through it, because it needs, you do need to drive through a lot of areas and to validate and prove each area of the business has been looked at. And there's one particular story about yours though that I really, really liked, and it's probably like for you guys, it's probably not irrelevant at all. But from a businessman's point of view, my side, I'm thinking, well, it was the story about the banking, because actually you who did you bank with?
We were banking with HSBC at the time.
Yeah, and there was obviously, I think there was some, I don't know, want to go into all the details of it all, but you then felt you better look at all of your suppliers, and that's when you discovered, who is it? Is it Starling?
Starling Bank, yeah.
Yeah, and they have a much more ethical approach. So actually, you're starting to procure your suppliers based on their ability to demonstrate that they are more ethical now, right?
Absolutely. We looked at all of our suppliers.
I mean, did you change a lot of them?
We changed, I think, 3 of them.
Three of them. Okay, it wasn't that many then. Okay.
But the banking was a big one, right? Because
it's always a pain to change banks, right?
It's a pain, but we went through the process. We looked at all of the alternatives, and landed on Starling. We liked them, and actually we kind of reached out to them. They reached out to us as being a B Corp, and they quite liked the story of us, the reason why we changed for our business banking. So and they serve us functionally. They were brilliant too. So we haven't looked back.
Yeah, and they've been brilliant through COVID. It's actually one of our favourite banks, because they would sort of send you like messages on your phone. Congratulations, you've got a COVID loan, whereas most banks wouldn't. It's been impossible to talk to them about it. But do you think that that's a message, just before we move on, do you think that's a really important message for some of the big, maybe let's call them legacy brands out there, that they really should start to look at, their approach? I mean, do you think it'll put more pressure on them ultimately to become better businesses when people are starting to procure? Or is that a bit of an obvious question? Steve, what do you think? Do you think it's going to cause a seed of change?
I really believe in it. So talking to someone that's worked in humanitarian for 20 years around the world and been a big advocate of charities and whatnot, I think to be honest, my view is of institutional charity is that it is a Victorian notion that's ripe for disruption, and I back B Corps as disrupting the third sector. Yeah. And I also think that, like, the traditional capitalist, totally for profit I think there's been a sea change in public opinion. I think there's been a huge trust leap in the last 20 years, particularly exacerbated by the gig economy and people trusting people and everything. We're going to come on to personal branding in a bit more detail. But if you just think about it, if you've bought and sold on eBay, if you've had an exchange on Gumtree, if you have made a purchasing decision based upon a review on Trustpilot, then you're buying into a personal brand, right? And within that, we're talking about banking, 2007 and 8 with the credit crunch, and the whole sea change of opinion against institutions, financial institutions, and then suddenly fintech explosion of challenger banks and whatnot. We don't trust government. So the whole institutional change thing and businesses. And then the other trend that we see is better businesses, right? Yeah. So businesses pushing the ethical, the conscious consumer, like the conscious consumption market is huge. You think of some of those brands like Ecova or whatever for cleaning products, and I think the CSR thing the corporate social responsibility seems so tokenistic, and people see through that as like it's a blag. Like, a lot of people see it as a blag. If you go through the B Corp assessment, 11 months, and by the way, we did it very quick. Some people take longer, but let's say you take a year and you go through 400 criteria points. You're not blagging that. And by the way, you only get that certification for 3 years, and then you've got to prove yourself again. Wow. So my opinion is, and by the way as well, the leaders, when you look at people like Mark Cadogan, the guy from Ella's Kitchen, I personally find some of the most inspiring business leaders are B leaders. So I think we got to be careful. A lot of people are going to follow, which is and I always ask people,
keep the standards high, haven't they?
They've got to keep the standards high, but not only this, right, is people come to me and Ryan and ask us for guidance around B Corp and stuff. And one of the first questions we ask is, what is your intention? What is your motivation for this? Because actually a lot of agencies might be just jumping on the bandwagon and going, this is going to generate more leads. This ain't just a feather in a cap. This is around living out principles and values. So it's about creating a cultural shift in your business of a different. You got to walk the walk, not just talk the talk with this. So I back the B Corp thing, obviously. However, it doesn't define us. We are on a journey. We can take it to the next level. So we need to keep on progressing, but I think it's the best thing out there at the moment.
Yeah. And does your team, have you found that people want to work for you because their values align? They understand B Corp aligned to it yet, or is it not that well known, do you think? Has it helped with the talent attraction at all? People feel like, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I was saying might have been Pete the other day, actually, that we've never put budgets with recruitment. We've always managed to recruit good people. And when we put the B Corp certification on our website, we realized that actually we got flooded with young talent. So I think there's different areas. Speaking on a B Corp call last night with B Corps impending and certified B Corps, there's certain areas like Brighton, they're on it. There's an ethical trend going down there. So you go down there, they're much more aware of the B Corp. But certain pockets in the country, they're not. But I think last year there was a lack of understanding what B Corp was. So an education piece to be done behind it. But the movement is growing fast. And one of the most recent B Corps, probably one of the biggest brands in the UK, Jamie Oliver. So that's significant, and that's definitely shining a light into the movement within the big brands in the UK.
Yeah, and I went snowboarding, which seems like a lifetime away. When I say February this year, I mean it feels like it's about 5 years ago, and it was just the most amazing trip as well. Actually, it was very fortunate to go in a helicopter up to the top of the Alps and jump out. And but one of my bindings broke on the way down, and it kind of like I lost part of the board, and it was fine though. It still would work. And I got to the bottom, and I went into a Burton store, and as I walked in, I noticed that they had the B Corp logo in the window, and I'd never seen that before from them. I didn't realize that maybe, I kind of, in my head, I guess I always think of Patagonia. I didn't really think of Burton or other maybe retailers having it. And so I went into Burton. Obviously, that's not Burton's, the high street men's shop. This is the snowball guys, right? And I took my board in and I showed them that what had happened, and part had come off. And something? There was 3 guys worked for 30 minutes on my board.
Nice.
And they didn't have the piece to fix it, but they found something they could fix it with, and they fixed it, and they put it all together. And the love and the care and the customer service was just phenomenal. And I turned around to them and I said, look, what do I owe you guys? And they went, don't worry about it. And I was like, no. I can't. You guys have just been. That's amazing what you've just done. And they picked up a box from behind the till, and it was for the Australian fires that had happened back then. He said, just make a donation to that. And I just thought, do you know what? And I thought to myself, I hoped that was B Corp filtering through the organisation, because I don't think I'm ever not going to buy a Burton snowboard now ever again. I will never not. I will probably, I probably have spent over the years thousands of pounds with them and other suppliers, but now I'm always going to stay with them. And so, because that, they had my back when I needed it, and I didn't take the money for it, which is just amazing, right?
It's a common theme with B Corps. Like, I go to the cook shop all the time. I've got 3 kids, and I'm ashamed to say it, but we have ready meals. But we have good ready meals because they're from the cook shop. And they know me as a B Corp in there. We've got a little friends pass. But yeah, they're always giving me chocolate brownies or some sort of just crazy to try. Even like some of the other high street B Corps, like Jojo, Mum and Baby. Like Karen came home. She didn't know they were a B Corp. Sorry, Karen's my wife. Oh, they were brilliant. I said, did you know they're a B Corp? And that's reassuring for us that other businesses out there aren't just getting this as sort of a mark to draw attention, as a virtual signaling for marketing. It's real. It's living and breathing through their culture, which is super exciting because people are going to lead with service now, and I hope to see more of them.
Yeah. So I think it's important that we talked about that, because I think the thing about you two that I've learned the most, the more I've got to know you over the last couple of years, is that, that authenticity that you have, from everything you do about, having this there's a lot of people who talk about purpose, but then are hypocritical about the way they execute their business behaviors, right? But you guys, I really genuinely know, you walk, it's a bit of a cheesy line, but you do walk the walk with it. You are, you live and breathe it. And I love that about you. And so, yes, let's talk some more about the stuff that you're doing now, which I'm really loving. And I've been a massive advocate of what I see. Probably 3 years ago, there was this article saying, 3 years from now, if you don't have a personal brand, no one will do business with you. And I was starting to, and I think Daniel Priestley last week highlighted the very important point that, when Golf had their scandal with the emissions, there was no individual in that company that could stand up and say, hey, I'm the chief exec. You all know me. You all love me. I'm like Branson. I'm sorry. You know me. I wouldn't have done this. We've just, it was just a corporate entity that basically seemed to be covering up a massive scandal. And so for many years. And so the importance of personal branding, I saw it become, more and more in our world, in agency world, more and more important. And it seemed to be lost, from the 80s and 90s, even before, where you had the wonderful David Ogilvy, who, would live and breathe everything about writing. And his agency became famous because of his name. It wasn't just, the Ogilvy brand. But in the noughties, everyone seemed to be so focused on creating a great brand and hiding behind it. The people who had built it, had clearly got lost somewhere along the line, or just wanted to not take any responsibility for it. But I guess, I've gone on this personal journey, and for me, it started wrongly or rightly by, going to America and seeing some great influencers speaking. Gary Vaynerchuk talking about, you've got to talk about the process, and James Potter, who telling me that when he looks at my LinkedIn, he doesn't know what I do because I like and share other people's posts. But I've come out of my shell, and you might say, well, that's easy because, you're more extroverted and confident. But it's not really. You guys made me take this test earlier on. I took it this morning for you. The Strengths Finder from Gallup. I'm moving it because it's holding my mic up. and one of the questions on there was, you find it easy to talk to strangers. I don't. I'm the person that walks in the room and can't break you. I know you're laughing at me, but I mean it. I can't break the ice. Like my best friend and my other friends, they can break the ice of anyone in the room. I'm terrible. Obviously, once I start talking, I don't stop. I mean, that's different, right? So, but the point is that, I've managed to come out of my shell, which hasn't been easy, and I'm sure it's even harder for many people. And we'll talk about that in a second. And I've started to talk about the process. People, I think, now know what I do, and it's building momentum now. But I've realized that I had no strategy. I had no plan. I'm just kind of winging it. Not winging it, but I'm talking about random stuff that I see and experience every single day. It may have an area of niche because I work in agencies. But a lot of people so I guess my question to you is twofold. One is, first of all, is there what comes first, the chicken or the egg? The strategy or having a go and trying to find out what you should do? Because I feel like I've had a go and now I need to really invest in getting the strategy right. And I guess there's some people who just won't go and talk, or won't even talk about their process unless they have a strategy, right? Because they don't know what they can talk about. Tell me about your experience about that, and how, what do you think? Is that a real loaded question? Sorry. I feel like it might have been.
Okay, let me start off, and then I'll bring Ryan in. There's a couple of ways of looking at this. One of the ways of looking at it is this: how would you feel about setting sail in a half-built boat?
Not very confident.
Okay. Now, what if it was a sunny, calm day, and you were like, do you know what? I just need to set sail. I need to get to my destination.
That would be me.
Right?
I would just give it a go.
Okay, right. So here's the thing, right? Is you take it out of the shipbuilder's yard, you take it down to the dock, you set sail, everything's cool and calm. You go out onto sea, and then even though you set sail, and this is what people do with their personal brands, they jump into activation, usually because they're impatient, and for whatever reason, they don't want to put in the time, effort, or there's many different reasons why people might just want to jump straight into activation, okay? But they set sail, but then when the waters get rocky, the storm hits, they're like, right, I need to build the rest of the boat. And then like, hang on a minute, I haven't got the right materials or the right tools on board. And then suddenly the ship isn't robust enough. And then suddenly you can be drowning at sea.
So here's my question to you then. What happens though is if you go away and you invest loads of money in building the boat for the first time, and then you realize you're seasick, you can't do it.
Do you know what you do? You find the antidote, which is the seasickness pills, or what you do is you find techniques such as stare at the horizon. Yeah, have you ever been out? You ever been out to sea? So here's the thing, right? You can get lucky, right? And the other thing is you got to understand your personality, who you are, because you might be very resilient. You might another analogy is a very common one we all know. Are you going to run before you can walk? Now, if you fall over and you start hurting yourself and you cause injury, you might be able to patch yourself up and get on with it. Other people, that might be a life-changing injury which prohibits them from ever running again. Coming back to the boat analogy, if you don't do, this is what we would stand by, is if you don't have a degree of strategy, and by the way, we're not talking about spending a year strategizing. Like we can get you up and running if you're a quick start in 7 hours.
Wow.
7 days.
Wow.
3 months, we can get you results in 3 months. So it's interesting the story we tell ourselves that it's actually a hill, it's not a mountain.
Yep.
Depending on what your level of commitment. So
you are right, because with hindsight, I now know that I should have come to someone like you first. But I actually, weirdly, I'm a massive fan of James Henderson for agency branding, and I've known James for many years, and he does wonderful work with the clients and friends that he's rebranded. He even did Blue Halo back in the day, and I remember saying to him, you know, hey, could you help me with some personal branding stuff? He's no, I don't do any of that stuff. And it was like 5-6 years ago. And so actually, I didn't really know where, I probably didn't really even know where to go. It wasn't really until I met you guys, you started talking about it. I saw both your websites. So RyanO'Keefe.com and SteveRichards.com, right? You Richard
XYZ.
Oh no, .xyz. That's right. And when I saw those, and then I then realized actually that you had, because you documented it and you told your stories, not just through Jago, but actually through your, because you are different sometimes to the business you're in. So what you just said then, I completely love. I love that analogy about the boat. And I think, yes, you've convinced me now that probably you should start that way. I guess it's just probably getting those assurances that there is a cure for seasickness when it comes up in the future, because I think some people will put a barrier up of going, I could never do that, even if you gave me a strategy.
Yeah. Do you know what, Spencer? There's been times where my eagerness, my enthusiasm, my passion has actually misled me, and I've been a rush to nowhere. So I don't want to be a rudderless ship and go and pat myself on the back and go, well done, Steve-O, you set sail and you forged out into the seas. Where am I going? I could waste time, like days, months going in this direction. I want to be going to India when in fact I'm going to America, get to America and go, this isn't where I wanted to arrive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Ryan, I can speak more about the process that we went through, but we really do believe in building a level of self-awareness, understanding who you are before you start then putting yourself out there on podcasts
I think anyone that's not gone down this journey so far needs to find, someone like you guys, but like to help them do this, because the impact that I'm seeing it have on businesses that are where people buy on trust, they buy on chemistry as well as capability, and building that manifest trust, that experience trust, all of those things come from knowing the people. And the more that you can give people the tools to show who they really are, I think the more empowering it will be. So Ryan, tell me about the process you guys went through then.
Just in terms of the trusting, the great thing about trust is it's transferable.
Yeah,
that's one of the biggest reasons why you need to invest in your personal brand. It's transferable. I tell you a story. Worked for Yale for 12 years. Okay, built up trust with lots and lots of people. So I had a great personal brand within one business. No one knew me outside of the business, but everyone knew me in this business, 2,000 or 3,000 people. Stepped out, set my own business up. Didn't mean anything to me then, because I'd built my personal brand within one company.
Yeah.
What did matter was the fact that I had previous relationships and a lot of trust with some of those clients. So when I went and left my own business, naturally they were knocking on the door. They were knocking on the door saying, we'd like to work with you. And that's the power of a good brand. And, we're talking about activation and putting ourselves out there, but ultimately it's also about building trust yourself. Who are you? Knowing that and being clear on your own identity and transferring that through wherever you are, whether that's in a meeting, down the pub with someone, online. Yes, we have to be professional, and sometimes we can be in more chilled states of mind. But ultimately, how you build trust is consistency of message, consistency of who you are. And in order to do that, you need to establish, as part of the process, what is your identity? Mr. Yellow Pages salesman is not my identity. It's my role, but we think it can be defining for us. Mr. B Corp is not my identity, but we think it can be defining for us. And so getting to that place of clarity by going backwards, understanding the stuff that you've been through in your life, creating your stories, your narrative from that you can tell and inspire, it's not about selling, it's not about going, buy from us, buy from us, buy from us. It's about building trust and actually building your tribe of people that really want to follow you. We know that we're not going to be loved and liked by everyone. We're not ready for that. And actually, we've started to realize that they tend to be slightly more middle-aged. And they tend to be people that want to make something happen for the final part, the second half of their career. Maybe
calling me old?
No, I'm not actually. No, no.
I'm just teasing.
But the point is this: lots of people, including myself, are not clear. I am now, but I have to start inner judge talking. And I know that because I've had to overcome all of those things. Imposter syndrome, which we'll come on to, thinking I'm not, good enough to get up and speak on stage or coming on this podcast. So we can overcome it. We're living. So
it's interesting what you say about the aging as well, because the nearer I'm late 40s now, 49, can't get later than that. But basically, I'm still in denial of 50. But because of that, I don't worry as much. I look at my daughter, at 19, and how much people worry when they're younger. But as you get older, you worry less. But also, you've learnt a lot, and you know a lot, and you have a lot to share. And I think that's probably makes sense why you said that about, I can get it. I think they probably are less. I mean, I don't really care what other people say. I really don't. Like, it doesn't. I know not everyone likes me, and I'm really happy with that. It's okay. I just run my own race and do what I can and help people and follow my laws of karma that I believe in, and hopefully it'll be right. But I also do feel that I was failing a bit by not sharing some of the things that I'd learned almost. And so, so it's interesting you say maybe when people are older, but they've probably got less barriers to do this. There's less psychological barriers and probably more resilient as well from a mental health perspective, because the Gen X generation I come from, we are a little bit school of hard knocks. And although many of us still get mental health problems, actually on the whole, we've gone through a lot of tough times to have enough resilience, whereas it's a lot tougher, I think, on some of the subsequent generations to be able to deal with those things.
Yeah, maybe.
Different era, yeah.
Might be right. It might be just the fact that Steve and I are now middle-aged. I'm late 30s.
All your network is old too.
No, they're not. We're all young and we've got lots in front of us. I think you're right. It's about everyone needs a supporter and everyone needs a coach. Even if you are a successful, we've got a new client, a successful entrepreneur, and he just couldn't do it alone. He needed support, guidance, and coaching. And I think what happens by going back and understanding your, people call it your why, your story, your points of view, what really makes you truly unique. What's the best part of Ryan O'Keefe, Steve Richards, or Spencer Gallagher? What is that? How do you distill that in essence? Because when you can understand that, it gives you a sense of confidence, and you can go out and put yourself out there online just like you would face to face. And that's so liberating. It's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable feeling to feel like that is me. I can look at that, and if I'm judged, well, that's judging me, and that's cool. That's no problem. And if I'm loved, well, that's good, because that's me too. So yeah, that's the process. There's assignments, there's assessments, there's one-to-one coaching, there's development, and we build up a pack and we synthesize that information to give to that particular client, so they've got an understanding of they're about me. There's some open and frank questions in there, so we do go quite deep. But in order to get to a place of growth, we have to go deep in those times. So
everything you say fits very much within a B2B marketing funnel, from a sales strategy, from marketing strategy perspective. I think it's very pervasive with almost the whole strategy piece. If you're able to develop your personal brand, you will build up awareness, you will get the consideration. And so it's something that I think is essential, and in fact, even in one of the tools that I have, which is my sort of my marketing blueprint for clients, which I've only in the last maybe 12 months sort of accelerated personal branding above the agency's branding, in the list of order of things to do, because I think at the end of the day, most of the speaking events that I've ever had have been more around me telling my story than maybe the business. I mean, I'm not saying the business hasn't had to tell stories or talk about what it does, but a lot of the time it's been more about the trials that I've had, and so in a way it's almost like feels like it's the first part of the puzzle is figure me out, then figure out the company afterwards, but only because lead generation comes a lot from the speaking and the networking and the people side of the business that we know.
If they don't trust you, they're not going to engage with your brand. They're not going to engage with their brands on that type of level. Picking up on your most recent podcast with Daniel Priestley, I loved what he said. He said,
remind me.
He said, this is not about being in the spotlight. This is about being the spotlight. So quite often people worry about, I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be an influencer. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about, 100 selfies a day. We're there to be a spotlight for our market, to be someone who can influence it in a positive way, shine a light on the challenges, the problems, and gather people together so we can all progress within that sector. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. So, yeah, I think we have a responsibility as leaders to put ourselves out there. How else are we going to grow and develop and add value to the people that we work with? How else are we going to do that, especially now we're locked down? We can't do events. We can't go and meet as many people. So I think there is a responsibility for entrepreneurs and leaders to start actually stepping over that line and to be brave and to put themselves in there.
And I think you guys obviously have a good process and a bit of a superpower around this, because I know that when we did some initial phone calls, I was super impressed with how quickly, maybe it's because I'm quite shallow at heart, I don't know, but you managed to sort of really figure me out and nail it down, Steve. You did a really good job of getting that done very quickly, and I felt really happy about it in a way. Maybe that's, I think, as I said, I think that's a good superpower that you have as a company.
Do you know what? We believe that everyone is a living story and they all have an important story to tell. So one of the greatest pains that me and Ryan have, and this comes back because we're people promoters and we're people lovers. Yeah, we want to see personal transformation in people. And one of the big frustrations we see is fantastic people going under the radar despite obvious talent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the question we've been asking ourselves is, why wouldn't you invest in your personal brand? It's almost like self-harm or irresponsible to your business. Like Very people true. Have got blinkers on their eyes. They don't realize how vulnerable they are.
Yeah, just don't tell my competitors, because I'm really loving the fact they're all so quiet.
No. Yeah.
No. So actually, before I talk about imposter syndrome, Steve, I do want to pick up one thing. I noticed that you, and you have spoken before about this in talks you've done, that you're an anthropologist, and I went through a phase about 3 years ago of really actually also, I started to do a couple of online courses around anthropology because I found it fascinating when I'd walk into offices and I could look at the body language of the people working in the business, and I could tell I learned there was so much you could learn just from the body language of studying how humans are. Who I'd walk in and I could see who was motivated. I could see who was just sitting there waiting to go home at 5:30, and I could see the cultures where people didn't want to be there. And I started to kind of look at it more, because I think those skills to be able to observe humans is actually quite a good art. So how does anthropology play a part in what you do now?
It runs through everything that we do. And just because this little genius over here, Mr. O'Keefe,
he's up here.
Is not a trained anthropologist. He is an anthropologist because me and him are like one, and the conversations, the journeys that we've been through, actually since we were 7 years of age, but actually very intensively over the last 20 years, is he's been on this journey with me, and he understands, like, one of the things that Ryan brings so much value into the business is around positioning, because he understands social, cultural practices and trends. He understands markets and then how to position, whether it's a business, whether it's an individual. And so we are, even though I am the qualified, if you like, anthropologist, I believe we are both qualified, and it's a lens we use because along with emotional intelligence, and Ryan can talk about emotional intelligence in a minute, but
ask about that.
The thing about, I specialize in social anthropology, which is our research methodology is called ethnography. And basically, you become a participant observer in a particular social set, group of people, culture for a minimum of 1 year. And you live, breathe, eat, do, sleep, do everything like they do. I've done three actually major ethnographies. One is with the Rastafari community for 20 years.
Hence the hair?
one of the influences for the hair and my diet.
Okay.
Yeah, for my vegan diet. And many different things to do with spiritual awareness, which takes your understanding of identity to another level. The other one is Buddhism. I practiced and lived in Nippon Zamyo Hoji Temple for 8 years.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've also done ethnography with Nairobians in Kenya, looking at particularly the migration of rural communities from the 1970s into like modern generations in urban setting, like in a post-colonial setting. So those are like my little specialist type areas. And what it is basically it's understanding people. And it doesn't matter what walk of life you come from, is around understanding people and meeting people on their ground. So one of the reasons why we could elicit a lot of information from you and understand you quickly is because we meet you where you are. And we're casting off any judgments. It's like we're just purely open. We immerse ourselves in your content. We read your book. We watch come to your webinars, whatever, your masterclasses, everything to try and get a deep understanding. And that's the discovery phase, right? So social cultural practices, understanding people's socializations, because get this, yeah, this is fascinating. Identity is not fixed. Personality is not fixed.
Yeah, because when you meet an actor, they often have lots of alter egos, don't they? Like almost other. What did I should get it right now. It wasn't Freud. It was Jung who said, he called it the personas. So people have other personas, don't they?
Of course.
So I was going to say to you as you were speaking then, do you ever have to work with people and you actually meet a persona, not the real them?
Do you know
why you do the personality test to try and find the real them?
Not yet, but I'll give you an example. Yeah, I have other personas.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. And listen, I'm sure you do. I mean, I think most people do, don't they? In different environments.
And this is one. I'll give you one of my personas, which people will be able to understand and relate to. Yeah, one of my personas is Wessa Judah. That is my DJ name.
Oh, okay.
One of the ethnographies I've done is in West Indian sound system culture.
Right. Okay.
So I've done pirate radio. I've DJ'd on West Indian sound system, 4th generation sound system. So when I'm DJing and
need to get some of those mixtapes off you.
Yeah, you can. Well, I'll hit you up. No worries. But here's the thing. Most people get that, like DJ names, right? Or you've had a nickname or whatever. Yeah. So, but my point is this: is we often hold on to traits of our identity and our personality, which are actually detrimental and holding us back. So one of the big questions we ask our clients is, what are you willing to let go of in order to move forward? And the story we tell ourselves isn't necessarily the true story. So this is why, coming back to your question around, do you need to do strategy? Do you need to do development? If you want to really understand who you truly are and then how to position yourself and show your true self, then part of that is understanding the socialization process you've been through. Now, you have lived in different places, you've worked in different jobs, you've gone through different experiences. Your personality now is not the same as Spencer when he was 20, 30, or when he was single, and then when he was a father and all the rest of it. So we're going to continually develop our personalities, and culture and identity is like a rolling river. You will always be Spencer. There's an essence in there. However, like the river is like the River Thames, and it's always been the River Thames, the water is flowing and it's not the same water. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. That's great. Yeah. And so you've got that half of you there, and you just touched on the fact that Ryan also has and I'm sure once again, you both do this as well. But Ryan, you're very big on emotional intelligence, on EQ as well, and you've invested a lot of time in learning that, as well as just obviously having a passion for it. So how does EQ and emotional intelligence play a part in what you do?
I recognized in my career at Yale, probably 5 years into it, I was asked the question, why are you so successful? Actually, Steve asked me the question. I remember it was in my flat, wasn't it, up the road?
Yeah.
Chatting one night, and he said, why are you so successful? And Steve summarized it. He said, interesting, you've never mentioned money. Where most salespeople I speak to is because I love the money, I'm passionate. And we started to go deep. We started to go deep and understand that. And we arrived at the place of emotional intelligence, and I started to study it and started to implement it in my interactions. Basically, emotional intelligence is how we manage our everyday interactions. Okay. Gary, our trainer, we call him the master trainer, he says, between stimulus and our actions is a gap. He calls it the gap, which basically means if someone says something, we can react to it straight away, but we don't have time to process that or manage it. If I'm really pissed off one morning because I've had an argument with my wife, that doesn't happen much, by the way, But if I did, and I was to jump straight into a meeting,
is she listening right now? Sorry,
but I did have to tell her, you know, to help me with the process. But anyway, the point being is, what was he saying?
The gap.
The gap.
To be able to manage that effectively manages your interactions more successfully. You can manage it with your clients, your meetings that you have. So the point being is, we go in with the wrong mindset and not have a conversation with ourselves initially about saying, actually, how do I feel right now? And how is this going to impact the other person? You talked about anthropology, actually understanding body language. Part of emotional intelligence as well is about understanding how someone is engaged when you're speaking to them. So that impact made me hugely successful, but also the bottom line is it helped me build trust at scale. I was able to build trust with more people because I was intentional about being emotionally in tune with them, leading with empathy, understanding them, and also making sure my own emotions are in check before I start that conversation. And so we bake that into our process with personal branding. There's no point going out building a personal brand if you can't have interactions. And interactions is not just a conversation. It's about a post that you might put out there. It's about, you know, a video that you might do. We've often done videos and gone, no, that's just not us. We've done it in the wrong emotional state. So this is not about over curating what people see. This is about just going through a process of saying, you know, how are we? How am I? How do I feel? And how is that going to impact the other person? And we think through personal branding and that combination with anthropology, it's a nice foundation to build upon, to really be authentic, to connect with the audience, and to build trust. And Steve and I got qualified.
We're not very empathetic, are we, as humans? I mean, I'm sure it was Alison Coward who did a talk and said that was it something like, you know, if you ask people if they think they've got good emotional intelligence, like, you know, 90% of people with their hands up, but the reality is that only 10% of people have got a level of is that right? Am I making those numbers up? Something like that.
Yeah, there's two plays with it. Obviously, if you've got low emotional intelligence, you might have low empathy, low self-esteem, low self-actualization, all of those things. If you've got really high emotional intelligence, which both Steve and I have got, basically,
I'm being given a message.
It's the wrong way around.
it's like inverted. Can anyone? Should I hold a mirror up? Should I look at WhatsApp quickly? We're live, and we're probably being told that we're currently not streaming and we're talking to ourselves. Hold that thought. Oh no, do you know what? It might be an hour. It might be just letting me know. Oh, have I got a lag on Skype, or is it all right?
Hey.
What does it say?
An hour gone.
1 hour gone. It was an hour gone. In the studio, Caitlin always holds up and goes, it's 1 hour. And I'm sitting here thinking maybe we've lost our stream and I don't know. Sorry, everyone. It was a slight interruption. So you were saying about, so you talked about people having low EQ and then having low emotional intelligence.
And then if you have a high emotional intelligence, which we do, it can also play. It can work against you. There are costs of high, which is, for me personally, it's overthinking, overanalyzing, not sleeping at night, overly in tune with your own emotions, which makes you hyper aware, which can lead to You
taught me some. You actually taught me something recently, probably without realizing it, but I think you were trying to. You got the message across. You did a Petra Kucha for us. For those of you who don't know, 20 slides, 20 seconds each. I think that works out at 7 minutes 40. And Ryan did a story, and he talked. Obviously, he mentioned briefly earlier on about how sick his daughter was earlier on, and he actually has a letter. We've got to hold it together when we talk about these things. But there's a letter from a doctor saying it's the sickest child that she or he had ever had to treat. But there was a photograph in your talk, and you're outside the hospital and you're having to take a business call, and you're explaining that no one knows what you've gone through. You've got a really, really bad, poorly daughter in hospital, and yet you're trying to put on a front, and you showed this picture. It wasn't actually you, was it? It was just like a library shot of some person outside the hospital on a phone. But it really struck me, when I started every conversation I had after that, I kept thinking and wondering what's the other person going through. Now, I like to try and use some clues to have empathy and understanding what people are coming from, but that really made me stop and be a little bit more respectful who I'm talking to. And I think it's, when you hear stories like that, you kind of do learn lessons a little bit. And weirdly, something happened. Like I was particularly empathetic and, on the phone one morning, and it turned out that person was going through a really, really tough time, and they opened up because of it. Whereas normally I might have just, blustered my way through a phone call and not really tuned into that and been able to help them. So
big time. Empathy is everything to me. And, it's being in hospital as much as I have, you get onto a level with the other parents, which is hugely empathetic. You all want a good outcome for each of us. And that is almost like being in the retirement home where people haven't got left. That perspective, that fresh perspective has always stayed with me. That's not to say I'm going around trying to help people, but that level of just being in tune, being empathetic, to say we're all human beings here. We've all suffered pain. And actually, that pain is the stuff that makes us unique.
And it's, it was about 2 years ago, wasn't it? I think when Microsoft did an advert on the Super Bowl, and they had loads of kids who had lost limbs, through birth or accidents, one or other, and it showed them all playing video games and how if you remember the advert, how all of the controllers had been adapted to help there. And my goddaughter doesn't have her arm from her elbow down, so I have empathy with that situation, the challenges it brings. And so and it was, everyone said at that time that was the beginning of empathy in advertising, because we have seen a massive increase in empathetic advertising over the past couple of years. It's definitely become something that people have cottoned on to, the importance of being able to connect, for humans to connect through that reason. Obviously we get a bit cynical and maybe think then people will start to take advantage of it. But I'm loving the fact that there's more than just a process to what you do. You're clearly taking, anthropology, emotional intelligence, and probably a bit of behavioral stuff mixed in there as well, based on the fact you made me take this personality test earlier on. And
experiences,
Sorry, say that again.
Life experiences.
And you take all of those things together, and that I think makes you, I really love it. It's a great approach. I love it, and I think it's certainly really nice to hear the way that you take it. So talk to me about imposter syndrome, because for me the big problem here really is two things. There's this kind of instant fear, which I think also always stems, Steve. The thing I seem to have learned is that most people I meet have had a childhood experience on stage at school that left them traumatic. I cannot tell you how many people it must be. I mean, it must be, for every agency owner I meet, 2 or 3 of them had for every 10 I meet, 2 or 3 of them probably had some kind of traumatic childhood experience to do with talking, where it was fight or flight. Flight kicks in, the fear, the cortisone goes up, and they choke, and they, and then they never want to do it again. So I guess, talk to me about that. How do you talk to me about the 2 areas really? One, which is the kind of, because they are different things. One's imposter, and the other side is just kind of like this almost nervous reaction, I guess, to being able to have to put yourself out there.
Yeah. So I suppose the first sort of question to ask ourselves is, are we going to be defined by our pasts?
Mm-hmm.
Coming back to the emotional thing, the emotional intelligence is, we all have different versions of our stories, and those have been embellished over years. Now we have emotional gravitas attached to those memories. So, for example, like my 2 sisters, they might remember a time, like an event that happened in their childhood, and even though they're in their 40s, they'll still talk about that event and have that, they haven't let it go. Do you know what I mean?
Emotions are imprinted, aren't they?
They're imprinted. And so we try to help facilitate people to arrive in the present.
Yeah.
And think about saying, this is a clean slate. And this is why for some clients, we need to do storyteller coaching, for instance, because if we're talking about, like your example, if it's public speaking, if it's like presenting like Pecha Kucha at one of your webinars or whatever, or getting in front of a camera and making your own original content, there's something about saying, no, my personality is flexible. Anything is up for grabs. And we say to people, we are reassuringly disruptive. Hey, you're not alone here. We're going to be with you. And we'll go at your pace. And even if that means jumping on a call like this, but that isn't live, it's just the three of us, let's do that and let's practice. And, you know, we'll do breathing technique. We will help support you all of the way to help you to overcome. And then it becomes like a rolling stone or a snowball, which gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And one of the proudest moments, I would say, this year was this week, having Louisa Dunbar, maximum respect, Louisa, because she suffered from it before, and she is amazing at putting carousels out there, beautifully designed, clever neuromarketing content. I love it. It's one of the highlights of my week on LinkedIn is seeing her post. And I want her to know I'm her number one supporter, and I want to see her doing video content. And one of the greatest joys this year was her coming on Ryan O'Keefe's LinkedIn Live and getting in front of the camera, feeling the fear, and just going ahead and doing it. And bravery like that, I applaud and I uphold. And she is an example. She is a leader. So if there's anyone watching this show that feels they can't do it, yes, you can do it. And I'm not saying it's us that support us, because actually we haven't done any work with Louisa. We just like her stuff and invited her. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, if we can do it, if she can do it, you can do it. So be careful of the story you tell yourself.
Yeah,
it's possible. So that deals with the fear thing. And then the imposter, there's many different
like whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Yeah, the story of, you know, telling yourself. I mean, I think most people will get what you're saying there, because I think a lot of us, you know, we do narrate this story about ourselves. Like, I know that I had a bad experience in front of a camera when I was younger, where, you know, I had to, I don't know, my boss had told me I have to drop the name of the company in when I was talking to the Australian camera crew. And so I kept cutting in, but as a result, they kept cutting it and reshooting it because they didn't want me dropping the company name in. And it got to the point where I was so stressed and anxious and anxiety about the whole thing that it anchored on me. Whenever a camera was in front of me, I'd just get tongue-tied, and it was really weird. And so it slowly got, probably why I was so nervous in the first ever agency phonics show. But actually, you know, you overcome these things, don't you, by just, you know, you almost change that emotion by the more you do it, the easier it becomes. I mean, I've seen Ryan transform. You know, when you first presented to me, you were, you know, you're kind of a little bit, but now you seem really relaxed, and like you've come a long way as well.
Listen, I still get nerves. I still got sweaty palms right now. But the truth is, I feel more comfortable and more confident to be myself and to go through that process. So, as I said, it's very liberating. I remember meeting you actually talking about imposter syndrome, right? That was one of the conversations we had. I was like, I need to speak to this guy. He's the main guy in the agency world, from what I can see. Let's go and align ourselves with him. And when I spoke to you and you said, well, you know, sometimes you just need to find maybe a different circle. I was like, yeah, pretty cool. But sometimes we need a supporter. Sometimes we need people around us that can trust us. You took me to Cayenne. We had a good meeting. I knew Cayenne before I even went in there. And, you know, that was part of my business plan research. But what I'm trying to say is the exposure to other people and for us to have those supporters and those people that we can trust around us can really support us with that. But often the imposter...
Do you know why I sent you into Cayenne, by the way?
Yeah, why?
Because I met you and I thought, I loved everything about you, and I saw just saw something in you guys that I knew could be really big, and I think it was because you were smart. The fact you'd gone down to B Corp quite early, like I know a lot of agencies, right? And you were there before everyone was talking about it completed, and there's maybe one or two other agencies at that stage, and I sent you there to be inspired, because actually I knew that you guys have got a lot of potential, and I just thought if I can get you in their office, you'll go, we could do this. That's why I sent you in there. I mean, it was quite a big thing.
I was like, yes, come on. And the thing is the exposure. The more exposure we can get to the things that we might fear, because imposter syndrome comes from perfectionism quite often, which is around, I want to do better. I want to add more value to the market, but I'm just not like these guys. These guys are much better than me. And it's all self-talk. We put everyone on a pedestal, but actually they're just human beings that have done it. They've succeeded and they're lovely people, but we fear them because of our own inner self-talk that's around perfectionism. Yeah. If we can overcome that by doing and engaging and gaining that confidence by trying something for the first time, it starts to disappear. It's like going to the gym for the first time. When you go in there, you're like, and I need to do it, by the way. And I started football this week. It's like Tuesday night, I was knackered and I played football with all people I didn't know that didn't trust me, and I had a terrible game. Went back last night, played with the guys that I really know. They trusted me. I'm the oldest guy in the team. They're all 20-something. They all trusted me. And I scored a hat-trick. The point is being with people you trust and people you believe in, and something you've done before can get you to that place of overcoming imposter syndrome like you don't belong. I still have times where I go, am I too old for this team? Do they really want me there?
It's also, I mean, I've helped a few people, and I've gone into clients. I don't know if I've told this story before on the show, but there was one agency I went into where all three shareholders, the three directors, the three leaders, were all had a fear of public speaking. And a good friend of mine, Daryl Scott, who's a proper NLP master and Jedi master of hypnosis. I got him to go in and spend a day with them, and all three of them were speaking within a week of him going in. So I like what Steve said earlier on about taking the seasickness pill. Anyone can overcome anything, right, if they really put their mind to it, and they can trust other people ultimately, I guess, to help them. And there is a way to overcome imposter syndrome, but you have to invest in it. You have to give yourself up to the investment. You have to get the right people around you to help you. And Steve,
I've got a supporter there in Steve. I've been so fortunate that when you can find someone, whether it's a business partner or a friend that you can trust implicitly to support you and hold you accountable, by the way. Steve's gone, where's your videos? And I was prompting him in the early days going, right, you've got
that. That's good.
He's saying, no, I'm not having it, Ryan. I'm not having it. You haven't done your videos. There's no excuses. You've been on holiday, but where's your bank of videos? So it's about holding each other accountable. And I'm lucky to have this guy here in the pink top to support me.
Steve, I think you kind of grew up kind of near where I live now and stuff, but how old were you when you first met Ryan?
I was 7 years of age and we went to school together.
7 years old. And so you guys have known each other for a long time, and now you work together. It's like a marriage.
We were together through our school days, and then I went to Africa and worked overseas for a bit and had a very near death experience. And that's when Ryan actually got in touch with me, because he heard. So it's interesting, isn't it? Like, when the shit really hits the fan, who are your fair weather friends? Who are the real people? Ryan was one that is the realest person that I know, the most honest conversation guy that I know. And when he turned up again and had a genuine empathy, it's that high level of empathy and emotional intelligence. That's when we rekindled, and I had another very tough situation when my wife said that she didn't see a future with me anymore. And that was hard to take, that rejection. And I went through a lot of pain through that time and fighting to try and save my marriage. And Ryan's always my rock when I need him, you know. And again,
Love that.
yeah, it's amazing. So we've been through so many like sort of traumatic and challenging situations, but interestingly, out of that failed marriage, I got a chunk of money. Yeah, because my chunk of money out of the house.
Yeah.
And I was working overseas like all the time. So I was off the grid. I had no fixed abode for many years. Yeah. I took that money and I backed this man here because he's the most backable person I believe that there is.
Yeah.
And that's trust. So I gave my money to invest with him and we said, let's start up a business.
Yeah.
And he took a huge risk as well. And look.
But then he also recognised your superpowers and got you fully involved and stopped you gallivanting around.
100%. Do you know what it is? Don't judge a book by its cover, right? We've had clients that have seen Steve and gone, who's that guy, the tall, white Rasta-looking geezer? Is he really a good fit for you? And I said, listen, don't judge a book by its cover. I'm going to send him out to you, and he's going to be your main contact. And do you know what? He loves Steve.
I think everybody loves Steve. I mean, even like I said to you guys this morning, like Abby is like, well, she's just the #1 Jago fan. She loves all your content. You know, she's like, I think, you know, Abby, very much works behind the scenes to help, you know, Pete and I and the rest of the crew at Cactus. And she's kind of, in a way, quite new, like 2-3 years into agency land, really. But she's super impressed by you guys. You do leave a really good impression, and you're easy to watch, and it's, you know, it's enjoyable watching you guys talk. And in fact, I was going to mention him, but I'm supposed to be on a conversation with him this afternoon in about 5 minutes. He's probably listening in going, you've got a call with me in 5 minutes. But Mark Lusted from Doc 9, who again is kind of a bit of a, you know, KPI in his space, in very much in the kind of mortgage and fintech space, and he saw your video, one of your videos, Ryan, and it inspired him to go out and to you know, get a gimbal and record some stuff. And so, you know, you guys aren't only, you know, communicating really well, you're actually really inspiring other people. And I may not know that, but I know lots of people have told me that. So just, I think it's fantastic what you've been doing. Don't give up. I'm sure you won't. It's the beginning of the journey, and I just hope that lots of other people realise what, like I have, you know, the importance of working with someone like you or yourselves to be able to help really shape that strategy and make sure that boat is a Sunseeker before I get on it, rather than a raft with a hole in it at the bottom of it or something like that.
Exactly. Do you know, my message to people is transformation is within your grasp. We're in the business of personal transformation, and you have the opportunity to rewrite your story. So, you know, the 3 big questions that human beings have always asked themselves is, who am I? Which is identity, right? Which is the development side of things. Where am I going? Direction, strategic direction. Why am I here? My purpose. So life is too short to not know who you are, why you're here, and where you're going. Don't be, and this comes in the imposter thing, don't talk yourself into being a victim. Be a victor. Triumph. Win over fear. Yeah? And back yourself. Rewrite your story. Be careful of the story you tell yourself, and know that you can unpick that, you can rewrite it, and you can set yourself on a new trajectory, and it's never too late. Yeah,
never too late. Even this week I did a talk. You didn't go to B Corp, did you, Ryan? No, but you know it because
for 2 days.
2 years. Oh, okay. So
it's 2 days. I dropped out of 2 days.
2 days. Sorry, the lag kicked in. Do you know it? But I did a talk there this week. Oh no, I just forgot. What were we just saying? I've just forgotten the link.
So you can rewrite your story and don't be a victim, be a victor.
Yeah, and I did a talk to the students there, and I was saying, you know, exactly that same point, basically, just the importance of, you know, when I look at my personal life at 16, working in Top Man for £4,500. It was actually Foster's, not Top Man, but kids don't know what Foster menswear was. But, you know, I earned £4,500 a year, which I think is the equivalent of like minimum wage today, you know, and I could easily have written my script. You know, I could easily have been that school dropout, left home, school 16 and achieved nothing. But in my head, I visualized the script of my life, and I kind of communicate the importance of rewriting that future. And it's funny because you always meet a lot of people in life who say, yeah, I visualized things and nothing ever really came true. And I'm like, well, that's true, but it's weird. All the successful people I meet did visualize it, you know? So there is something in it, but it's never really an exact science. It's how everything else around you, I guess, you know, deals with how you're going to interpret that visual future for yourself.
Yeah, and how much hard work and perseverance and resilience.
Yeah.
And what did you put into it? So some people might go, yeah, I visualized it.
Yeah.
But they didn't do anything. So you've got to do things to make it happen, you know?
We have a saying, it's called dream it, believe it, become it. It's a bit of a joke, but you have to have a dream, you have to believe in it, and then you become it, right? And similar backgrounds, you know, I came from a council estate, but I always had that belief I could do something different. Yeah. It was innate within me. I don't know what it was, but it was there constantly. And that drove me to ultimately a more fulfilling life and the life that I wanted.
And I heard a lot of funny enough, it was actually my daughter who told me the story. She said, you know, was it Ronaldo who said one day, you know, I'll live in a big house, Dad, and his dad said, no, you won't. And he said, and now I live in a big house, but I don't have a dad, or something like that. There was some story, and it was like, you know, there's so many stories of visualizing successful outcomes, and you know, whether it be Pele scoring goals, a lot of sports people, you know, Michael Jordan, you know, who'd visualize or practice. In fact, there was that really famous study, wasn't there, that I read. Have you heard about where they got three groups of people? One people to take the basketball shot. It's like every night for a month or something. I won't quote it exactly. Someone else has probably heard. It's probably on YouTube. And then one group of people who watch people make the move, and then one group of people who basically practice making the move without actually being there. Or no, it was the people who visualized it who weren't there at all. And the people who visualized the shots ended up scoring more in the test than the people who practiced it. It was, you know, actually scientifically proven the power of it. And so, yes, it's fascinating that side of things. And I agree the point there that don't write. I love that. Don't write your own, you know, story. Not necessarily write your own story, but
you can rewrite your story. So don't be a prisoner of your past.
Don't be a victim of your story. Yeah.
Don't be the victim. Be the victor. So don't be defined by your past. Anything is up for grabs. Now is the time to be radical.
Yeah.
And so the other point is, people don't realize. I'm seeing so many people, God bless them, with that are now open to work because they've lost their jobs. We don't realize how vulnerable we are without this personal brand. So it's like, whether you want to change your careers, whether you want to exit your business, whether you get made redundant, whatever it is, it's like, don't delay. Like, invest in your personal brand, invest in your personal development, go through that personal transformation in order to set yourself up to survive, thrive, win, lead more, earn more. But if you stay shackled by that story, which isn't a true story, you're going to just remain the victim and become vulnerable, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's good advice. It's easy just to say, you know, open to work, I'm a bit of a victim here, rather than actually just getting out and just talking about the things you know about and being almost more positive. Is that what you're kind of saying here?
I'm not saying the open to work people are victims. But what I'm saying is, I've been through a stage where I've been out of.
Is what I'm saying. Don't let it define you as being someone, you know.
Exactly. I would.
Who's labelled, I'm out of work, I'm, you know,
I don't particularly like that. What I would love to see people doing is leading with their passions, their interests, their gifts and their talents, because like if you can find common ground and it will attract, your value by knowing your gift. And so I believe that we all carry a gift. And this is why it's so important to us. And we'd love to work with people that are struggling to find their gift, because we believe unearthing that gift will help them to arrive at their value. But I do wonder how many people are lost because they don't know their gift and therefore they don't know their value. And this is in business and brand terms, positioning. Yeah. And so if you're positioning yourself as just open to work, where's the value proposition in that?
Exactly. It's just a label for you, and it may be that it's wrongly stereotyped by people who don't really get to see the real you.
Yeah, or people that are agency owners or business owners that they'll be like, yeah, the dream is to exit the business. Well, what after that?
Yeah. Well, that, by the way, and that is a very, very, you mentioned self-actualization earlier on and Maslow, and I think the why that's so true is because, and I again, one of the things I talked about actually on the B Corp talk was I actually tell a story of my unlucky story, and I talk about all the things that went wrong, and I had my girlfriend run off with a gym instructor as part of the many times I almost died before that, and I tell all the downsides of what happened, but one of the oh god, now I've lost my train of thought now, because as I was telling that story I started thinking about the bits about when I died and stuff, the self-actualization. But when I sold the business, it was Sahar who founded the original Coffee Republic, and I just told her story about she I remember hearing her speak once, and she said that she sold the business, but she'd sold the one amazingly successful thing that she created, and then she was left feeling empty. And actually there has been lots of talk of people being very suffering big mental health issues after selling businesses because they haven't filled that void. And I had the same thing. As a 16-year-old, I spent my whole life trying to be successful, and then when I became successful and that business sold, I was kind of left feeling like I'd lost the one thing that defined me, and so I had to
it's attachment.
New journey of discovery. So
because we believe now in contemporary societies, the mistake business owners are making is their identity and their attachment is to their company brand. But if you're going to exit that business, who are you? So if you don't have that personal brand and that understanding and knowledge of self, you're going to be lost again. That's like the ship, like the dinghy off the main mothership being put out there without the rudder. Again, you're not going to have direction. You're going to be lost.
And actually, it's funny because Pete always jokes about this. He often says, I think that the guys that bought the business didn't buy Blue Halo. They just paid a very expensive recruitment fee for you. And so the proof there was actually, I did have a reasonably good network and connections. And so that it may not be in the same way as it is now, but it was still reasonably high profile at the time, in the industry. So again, it is another reason for those people who are working their business who feel like in the future, maybe they do want to build their business to sell it. Some are built for last, some are built to sell, some are legacy work, some are different reasons. But if they are, then there's another reason it's important to get that part right, because it may play a part in their end journey at some stage. Wow, we covered a lot, guys.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
It's been amazing.
Yeah, you got across all the things you want to talk about?
Rhino?
Keep going forever. I think we've covered a lot. I think it's been good.
Ryan, this morning we had a quick catch up, and he said, "What are we going to talk about?" I said, "I don't know yet. We'll just go with the flow." I think we've gone with the flow really well. Everyone thinks these talks are really staged, but they're really not. So, listen, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope the lag's not been too bad. I know we've gone over an hour. I don't know how long we've been, but I really appreciate you giving up the time to talk to us. You both look fantastic. I'm loving the backdrops today. They seem really authentic and no fake Zoom stuff. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I've learned loads, and I'm really excited, looking forward to working with you as well. So until soon, my friends. So hopefully everyone enjoyed our latest episode. And we aren't back in the. We sort of went back in the studio, then we came back out again. So we're slowly. I don't know whether. What do you think? Do you think lockdown? I heard Birmingham's locked down tonight, or they're suddenly locking up Birmingham. So I'm hoping we're not going to spend all of our winter back on Zoom quizzes and Zoom poker nights. But I think we're all sick of that, aren't we already? So have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thanks everyone
Peace
for listening.
out. Thanks, Spencer.
Bye now. And that's a wrap.